So essentially, for those that may not have heard of Harvey Water, my employer, we're a private irrigators cooperative that privatised 21 years ago from the then Public Works Department, so now our colleagues in the Water Corporation. Oh, great. All right, cool. We pretty much exist to facilitate the delivery of known potable water to farmers. So everyone else has really talked within the potable water realm today, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about agricultural water and a little bit of industrial water as well. So we essentially achieve this through our delivery network of 500 kilometres of pipeline and 240 kilometres of open channel infrastructure. So we still have some fairly archaic delivery systems in effect, but there's reason for that, or there's reason we haven't paid to upgrade that yet, which I'll touch on in the presentation. So I am an environmental science graduate, so I'm sort of the world's oldest graduate. I'm fledgling in my career at Harvey Water. I've only been there for a couple of years, but thoroughly enjoying being a part of the water sector. Dan has left us, but he said earlier that this is a recession-proof industry. I've been lucky enough to work in 2 recession-proof industries now, the other one being the liquor and hospitality sector. So if my face looks a little bit familiar to you, there's probably a good chance you've run into me at many of our fine establishments around the southwest. But I'm thoroughly enjoying my current job. So I just put this little cartoon up here. It's probably showing my age a bit if anyone remembers the Far Side comics by Gary Larson, but basically what we deal with our irrigation cooperative is beef and dairy pasture, so I thought put a little picture up there to kind of set the scene. But essentially we're dealing with double-sided. I'm going to give you some background to our unique challenges regarding our dam surface water storage management. These storages are likely to yield less and less volume each irrigation season, so we work in a seasonal framework. I'd also like to give a little bit of a general overview of some of the challenges that are facing the agricultural water sector, which aren't really a secret, and everyone's going to have some insight into some of these as well across your respective industries. I'd also like to share some water quality issues that impact some members of our cooperative, particularly those that still use our channel infrastructure. So a little bit of a set-up to the scene here. This is our irrigation area. So for those of you not from the west, Perth is here, so we're sitting about 130 k's south from Perth. We've got our storages kicking around here, which I've labelled. You might not be able to read them, but essentially we draw water. We've got a licence to divert water from Wellington Dam, Drakesbrook Dam in the north. So that's Waroona there. There's a lot of horticultural water use up there. We've got a low brook storage, which is just, if anyone gets the opportunity to go there, there is pretty good recreational amenity, but it's probably one of the most beautiful, pure, protected catchments you could ever hope to use water from. Sometimes I'm a little bit guilty that it's irrigation water, but we're trying our best to conserve water in that dam at the moment. Harvey Dam's our biggest storage in the north. We're licensed to take 56 gigalitres from that dam. Currently, we're probably tracking in line with last season for our diversion from that dam. So we've managed to conserve a little bit of water in Waroona and Low Brook, which is great because they basically facilitate this little green area here. This character's got to look after this whole area here, and when we get south of the line here, we start to look at our salinity issues coming from our biggest storage, but our biggest problem child, Wellington Dam. So the salinity in there is around 1,200 parts per million, which, if anyone's had any horticultural experience, you really don't want anything more than 500 parts to grow nice quality fruit and veggies. So the story. So this is about our allocation system. So we use an internal allocation, I suppose you'd call it a water balance, to work out how we can better sustain our reserve storages to share across those 3 irrigation districts. 68 gigs is our total licence that we're allowed to divert from those northern dams. So everything from above the line here. So Harvey, Logue, Waroona, Drakesbrook. This is a tracking of our allocation trends over the last few years there. Days of plenty here, possibly also before we started to realise the significance of what climate change was doing to our storages. We've got our 2010 drought year, so that was the worst allocation percent available. So this is just, to put in reference, this is really just for our Northern Dam users. So in the south, we're not imposing any allocation restrictions. They can have as much water as they want from Wellington Dam. However, it's 1,200 parts per million, so they're a little bit limited with what they can do with it. So we've managed this season, so for the 2016-17 season, to have pretty much on a 60% allocation, which is our biggest one for quite a few years. Remains to be seen what it will be for the coming season. So the part of the whole goal is to really streamline these peaks and troughs. So I mean, I think these days might actually be well behind us, but if we could focus on something around here moving forward, our irrigators would be pretty happy and our board would be quite happy as well. So everyone in this room is probably very aware of what's happening with rainfall. This is based on some of our local data. We've maintained a network of weather stations that are publicly accessible through DPIRD's website, but we've collated years of climate data into sort of a bit of a sketchy looking model moving forward. So, you know, kicking around the 700 mil, bowing out down there to, you know, that would have been a 280 odd year. It's not looking good moving forward, and the stream flow trends that we're looking at, because that's what we're really concerned with, stream flow into our storages, looking pretty sad as well. Even this last year we had some good trend movement here, probably gave away a little bit too much of an allocation and we've ended up down here. So kicking forward, this is basically a big snapshot overview of our main chart that we use at work to chart our dam storage process. So this is a newer system for us. We still use a very big, very clunky Excel spreadsheet to do our water balancing every week, but the output now looks like this, so it's much easier to read. We've got the last couple of years of storage. Again, this is just our northern dams. I'll talk about Wellington in a little bit. So as you can see, we started with a much better reserve storage based on the tail end of last season. So we started about here. And we've just had a little bit of a plummet. This isn't the most recent version of this spreadsheet. If I looked at it again now, it seems to have levelled out a little bit, but there was quite a big bit of consumption here. We put that down to the season hasn't broken yet, as we call it. We've had touches of rainfall. We've had a little bit of summer rain. They haven't really done much to quell the thirst, I suppose, for the irrigation water. So I'll talk a little bit now about how we come up with this water balance or this storage line here. This is our clunky spreadsheet. I still find it a pretty handy tool, and as someone getting my head around the game here, essentially it just monitors all our dam releases, irrigation deliveries, evaporation, any spillages, which we don't have too many of these days, so anything that was to spill over a dam wall. They're all monitored and recorded in this water balance spreadsheet. We call it our water allocation report, or the war report, as it's commonly known. And filling it out is a little bit like going to war. We sit there every week and go through our data and meticulously, well, some of the older blokes finger type it in, but got a bit of a leg up on them there. But essentially we've got a lot of telemetered SCADA systems on valves and actuators within our pipe and channel infrastructure. We've got a whole system of flow control, level meters, monitoring ponds, and manual checks and flumes on our open channels. So we still have blokes that run around and dip a stick over a known weir width to work out what the flow rate is there. And some of those sites, it's a bit challenging to upgrade with the cost of telemetry and whatnot to get it in. But they're reasonably accurate measurements, and the guys have been taking them for years, so they're quite well acquainted with it. But essentially, the main goal of all this nonsense here is to arrive at a little percentage allocation figure down the bottom. So in the previous few slides where I tracked those blue bars, if we were looking at this, I think this is from about 2 weeks ago, this particular snapshot. If the season ended now and we didn't get any rainfall, we'd be looking at giving our irrigators a 32% allocation. So we have issued allocations as low as that in the past. We, strictly speaking, give our cooperative members a deadline of the 1st of October is when they can expect to hear about what that percentage allocation is. So what this is showing here, so we track our environmental water releases as well and our evaporation figures. This starts at a base figure. It's actually 8.5 gigs. So anything you see here is these ones are in megalitres, but we're basically taking away from the 8.5 gig every week with what we've discharged from our environment. So we exclude our irrigation deliveries. that's essentially our reserve figure. We've also got this bank figure here, but that 8.5 gig does come out of that 15 gig, so this is going to get to zero pretty soon. We were going to hope for some rainfall in the short term. So we have been developing a targeted case study with the Bureau of Meteorology, focusing on some of our northern dam catchments to try and develop longer-term streamflow forecasting model exclusively based in those catchments, so almost targeted to those dam storages. At some point, we'd be looking at tying that in with this report and with our overall charting spreadsheet there. Rightio. Additional sources. So if I've had a bit of a yap to any of you over the course of the day, I've probably been interested in saying, oh, you know, we might like some recycled water or this or that. The challenges therein are numerous. Currently, we're having a little bit of a look at trying to access some stream water in one of our streams not currently under licence. So we've done a winter trial last season and we've managed to divert about 12.5 megalitres a day from that stream. Now we move into fine-tuning that to come up with an agreement with Department of Water and Environmental Regulation about how we would manage that moving forward if it became a possibility. So in the scheme of a large irrigation supply outlet, an irrigator might use about 12 megalitres a day for a 24-hour period to surface bay irrigate his pasture. So that's a good trade-off for us. If we could actually get an extra 12.5 megs a day, it'd knock a big supply out for us. So the theme of any networking event I've been to recently, I've been to a couple of CRC workshops, etc., is collaboration is where the key is moving forward, and I think it's great to have come here because of that, because of the opportunity to share ideas. But we're little guys. We need to start talking with the bigger guys and sharing, I think, and leeching any ideas we can from you. So I'll be happy to chat with anyone afterwards if anyone's got any suggestions about supplementing our surface water storages. So a little bit now I'd like to talk about is how we manage water on farm or encourage on-farm management across our cooperatives. So this is one of our local chaps, Stu. He's modelling the floppy sprinkler setup on, I think, an early planting of some fodder beets he's got there. Essentially, he's one of our more switched-on irrigators who's quite keen to invest the money to look at some better on-farm water use efficiency. The big issue with irrigation is the relationship between the surface irrigation application and the subsoil moisture regulation. And we've moved away from a term that we used to use in the office called flood irrigation. It might unfortunately pop up in one of my slides, but surface bay irrigation sounds a lot better. But if you look at this, it is quite literally water flooding out of an open head ditch. We've got some maize silage here. I mean, looking at that, you can see that it's not the most water efficient use how we could be delivering. Down the bottom, we've got one of our old Dethridge wheels, so that's actually coming in off a channel on this side, and this is the irrigator's head ditch. There's numerous problems with these sort of delivery systems: evaporation, you've got stock damage there, you've got losses. You can't shut a tap off and stop that water from flooding once it's released from the bay. So we've actually got a little picture down here of what we're trying to encourage, this sort of system here, upgrading to a completely piped head ditch sort of infrastructure, which eliminates all those evaporation and delivery losses as well. So there's a few other benefits of having a pipe system in place as well. It saves a lot of time and water. The farmer no longer has to wait for this head ditch to fill as it bubbles out of this pot. There's also applications for automating the technology, which means he doesn't have to get out of bed at 2 in the morning and do a change and things like that. And it also has future applications for measuring the subsurface moisture within his pasture or within his desired crop. So we're trying to also encourage our irrigators to use more efficient scheduling. So that's on-farm scheduling, kind of encouraging them to not overwater, which is an issue where we've got lots of dry soils and clay soils as well, because they seem to retain all that moisture in the field, and you get a lot of water pissing into the tail drains. So what have we got here? All right. We are looking at some other sort of technology here. So this is actually a little picture of an fully automated bay based on that piping, that piped head ditch infrastructure from the previous slide. This was our farmer Stu's. He's got probably 15 of these units on his farm that basically are connected to a little gypsum soil dot moisture monitor that basically automatically regulates how much water he's applying across his pastures. And he's saved a lot of labour and time running around looking after his water. More importantly, he saved about 15% water use on farms. So he's a dairy farmer. There are still a few of them left in the southwest. It's generally those higher output guys that can afford this sort of technology, but the savings in labour have well justified it for him. So at Harvey Water, we also, I've cut the picture out a little bit, but we use a lot of outpost.com loggers. So this is just one that's been fitted to one of our standard delivery meters here. But this technology can also be tied in with the soil moisture monitors and the bay automation so that we can have an end user product, whereas Stu, our farmer, can actually live track his water use and everything. So currently we mostly use this technology for live tracking our flow readings, our consumption data and things like that. But I think where it's really going to come into its own is using that soil moisture monitoring technology. So putting a few of the different delivery methods for agriculture into context. So I do apologise, there's that word flood there, but that essentially is that picture of that open bay flooding out into that maize silage. We can see our greatest efficiency. So what we're talking about here is our yield, our tonnes per hectare per megalitre. So it's quite striking when you've got your centre pivot, your big centre pivot sprinklers, your floppy sprinklers, which Stu was modelling a few slides back. I won't delve too much into these ones here because it's definitely not my area of expertise, but if we could encourage a majority of our irrigators to look at this sort of application here, yes, they do come at a reasonable expense. Cheaper so than the floppy because there's a lot of labour involved with rolling them out and packing them up and moving them around. But the problem being, our centre pivots aren't well suited to high salinity water. So that's going to lead us into, there's a nice picture of a pivot. This is actually brand new, it's in pretty good condition. Some of them that are about 10 years old, you'll notice have a little bit of weathering on them and things like that. But they are not suited to high salinity water. So it brings me into the next part of the talk. Wellington Dam. So I haven't forgotten about our channel irrigators in the south. Harvey Water's sort of been working very closely with a couple of other stakeholders to come up with a viable solution to the salinity problem in Wellington Dam. This is just a little bit of chart of our in-house data. I believe a lot of this data's been shed from Water Corporation as well, so we work very closely with them on the data management side of things. This is quite a long tracking period. I've tried to condense a lot of info here, but I hate using the trend line, so I apologise for that. My boss loves them though, but yeah, you can clearly see how the salinity is tracking just recently at the end of last year. So we have these massive spikes in winter when we are hit with a salt slug encroaching from the Collie River East Branch. So this is what our little project's hoping to address in the next over the next few years. So if anyone's heard of it, we're talking about the Mile Up Wellington project. It's probably been talked before as the Mile Up Wellington Water for Food project. So essentially what it's attempting to address is that massive storage of water in Wellington that's really inefficient for use in growing productive things like food and veggies. We might be able to address some issues on the coast. We're not currently affiliated with any of the Mile Up growers, but we're hoping to maybe at some point in the future be able to give them some better quality Wellington Dam water. Great Southern Towns currently draw water from Harris Dam, I believe, which is upstream from Wellington Dam. If they could have access to some better quality water there, that would also be very handy. The job opportunities as well in the southwest. Collie traditionally has been a coal mining town, and there's been some dramas there with mines closing, etc. Hopefully we can address that with this project. So I'll just skip through because I'm running out of time. It's probably very riveting just after lunch to hear me talk about all this stuff. But Quick overview of the project. We would like to build a diversion site on the east branch of the Collie River at Buckingham Weir. We would like to pipe this water to a current Griffin coal mine void, then pipe from this void to Synergy desal plant or Synergy-based desal plant, desalinate this water down to potable quality, pipe this into Harris Dam to supplement those Great Southern Towns water supply, and any of the brine outfall would go through the existing Synergy brine outfall pipe. Quickly, because these are some great pictures, this is pretty much what the Collie River East Branch looks like right now, about this time of year. Dry as a chip, but in winter we get big flows come through there. I apologise if that's a bit dark. I probably took it at like 5 in the morning or something like that when I was up there, but this salt content is very, very high. We're talking like 9,000 parts per million coming in there, so you can see how it's impacting that gradual reservoir in Wellington. We've got some existing pipe infrastructure there from a diversion trial that was conducted by Harvey Water in 2005, and a really specky shot of the proposed mine void where we'd like to put this diverted water in before it's piped. So that's a quick overview of it. Yeah, virtually what I've said there. So that's a huge volume of water to be diverted out of that Creb East Branch. It's massive, but if that can be reutilised, processed and given to Harris Dam, I think it's going to be a huge benefit. For us, we're looking at this. We just want our water to come down to 600 to 800 TDS parts per million that we can use, make agriculture more viable in the south of Collie there. Look, thanks guys. Appreciate your time. Thanks for your patience there. Yeah, I really appreciate that. If anyone's got questions, I'm sure you will because I didn't quite get through it, but have a chat with me after and I'll try my best to answer them. So thanks guys, appreciate that.